I didn't get the first part recorded, unfortunately. Right. So where are we? If I just show you as an example the model in just any app we build, we should be comfortable creating many types of model. And I hope to see maybe you show what you have with TinyPulse. This is a Rails 5 app, but basically I have some model that include that, right? Conversion and then extend naming. So it also use convention to figure out, oh, what is the singular, plural, how do you do, what's the, but because we don't really have the database persistence layer, so I'm just using some of the extra stuff.
So this is well file, well form.
4, 5, they both have this. Yeah.
Not well 3.
3 also similar. Yeah, 3 they have active model. 4 has a lot more like this. So let's say active model conversion is, I still can't get to the other side. Okay. Maybe this one. Active, right. So you see, like the idea is that even the most basic one just include that. It's not inherit the whole thing. Then it gives you some attribute to play with. So if it's you say model, then it has an idea of whether it's a new record or not. So that's a persistent model. You overwrite that method if you want, right? Now conversion, as you see, validation, for example, you get it for free. You don't need to talk to anything, but when you do this, then you can do validate unique, what's that? A few validation require database.
But you need.
Yeah, but a few they don't, like presence. Conversion is where you have this. These are very important when you do the shortcut of render partial, render collection, right? That's because thanks to this, then you know what partial to render. Otherwise, you have to specify the name.
But why you pass out?
So let's say if you do render user, right? Let's say if I go to a view, home, let's say index. So this, let's say if I just do render user, right?
Yeah.
Technically, the long form is render partial user, but then they also know where the user is, so it has to be like in there, right? And then you have to pass in the local. That's a long format. So if it doesn't understand, if you don't use active model conversion, right, then you have to do it manually for yourself. Like here is user, pass in this user. So these two are the same, except this one is smart, right? Same with form 4, for example. Form 4 user, that is the short version, right? But the long version is form 4 user. URL is, let's say, if you post, then it's user's path. If not, then it's user path user, right? And then also the method, if it's new, which is persisted, right? User persisted, then it's post. Otherwise, it's patch, right, or put. What's the difference between patch and put?
Patch is just a small set of data.
Yeah. Patch is like patching, like if you only update 1 or 2 attributes in there. Put, you update the entire object. Yeah. So it's just a convention, like it's okay if you use one for another. So that's the idea. All this clever convention make Rails very easy, like short, but it's thanks to all these fun methods that they provide. So sometimes we take advantage of it by using that in our model, and we will know why soon. So whoa, this is small, huh? Okay. So look at these roles again. Active Record does all of that, and more and more over time. So why is convention over configuration nice? Right? Mainly when you name your database, when you name your table, you just need to specify one name. It know model singular user, and then it know what table and what relationship, right, to go to. Foreign key also its own is ID. User post, then post is user underscore ID if it belongs to, right? All of that. Okay. So active record. Okay, we have an idea that this guy just does a lot of things. The callback. This is something you guys use a lot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's another thing. We learned this first, and then if there's time, unfortunately, this course is super short, right? How to avoid callback hell of all this being when you do save, you don't know how many methods get called, right? But you at least here now you know that they people might put methods in all these places. Okay, so validation, you have before, after, almost all, but not all. You have before and after. Okay, the stage before validation, after, before save. There's after save, but you also have around. Around just means it grabs save in a block and then it just does it, right? You can do it before and after. Same. So everything here seems fine. This means does it mean that they're the same thing? These two methods? After commit, after rollback. So after rollback thing is if it fails, right? But after commit means if it succeeds. Yeah. So this is simple, right? Sort of all the methods make sense. The two useful ones that you don't have before after is this one. Remember when you sometimes you want to set some attribute or just want to do something fun like send notification, something like that. But here, you guys know what this guy does after initialize? So you don't. It's more dangerous to because active records huge. If you overwrite, one way is to do this. It's fine, but def initialize, you overwrite this method, but then you have to know sort of arguments, right? And then maybe like it could be nil or nothing, and then you have to call super on it, and then now you can do after initialize stuff here, right? But then it just this block make it life a little simpler, right? So how is it useful? It's useful if you want to set some default values, but you don't want to save. So for example, if I do user.new here, so instead of user.new, let's say here you can say user.name is hello. Right? It means for your form, you can, when you do this now, when you do form for user.new, right? Let's say it's not been saved, but there's a default name, like no name. Let's say up here there's no name. So that's a few ways for you to deal with to avoid the nil attributes. Sometimes because like image tag, you want to image tag user.image URL, but that field is nil, and you don't like dealing with nil, so you can set it, and it's still not saved to the database until you save it. Right? So this one is you may see it in a few apps, maybe in your app, but again, as your app become complicated, initially it's really nice. When it becomes complicated, should remove it, do something better. This is similar, but it's for find. Right? First, find. This is similar. This is for build. You've seen this, right? This is often, right? This does mean user.new and company ID is company. We all know build. You guys used it a lot. So say if you in nested sources. So if you say post ID, so let's say this is ID comment nested routes. So when you post here, right? let's say 123, right? So you want to say, oh, post is post.find params I post ID because this is nested routes, and then you want to say post.params no comments dot build, right? And then now you pass in the params comment. That's how you create the new record. That's the cleaner looking way. The other way is to use what command.new and then post is post and then the same. But then now you have to merge. See how it's harder to merge? Then I'm like, oh, okay, so maybe I have params command dot merge, right? But that's not enough because actually you don't do this anymore in Rails 4 because you have to. It's got strong parameters. You have to do require. We did this in our class, and then permit, like title, body, and it just become like super complicated, right? So that's the idea of those sort of. That's the build and the new, the main difference. First, find, they're all like that. So this is after find, right? There's also something called touch. Has anyone used it? When you touch something, it update to that, which is nice. In some cases, you want it, and there's even a relationship. You can have a relationship like when you touch a child, it also touches the parent. So you can have user, let's say, has many posts touch true. So when you touch the child, then it will also touch user.
When you update an attribute to something else.
Yeah. When you touch, you update to that column. But if you touch the child in post, it will update. Like when you display like this record has been updated, like this report. In the report, you have many rows, many items. So this touch is very convenient way of saying, oh, someone updated this report, but actually they update all the to-do tasks in that report.
So in this case, when we touch user, it will automatically take post, or when we take post, it will automatically take user.
I think it's only from children to parent. That makes sense, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
Do you make parent to children? Not really. Like, when you touch change company data, like, or in the case of a report, you make a report and then there's some items in this report, an invoice, right? If you have an invoice and in there's an invoice item, there are a lot of them. You update any invoice item, that update the invoice. Invoice has many invoice items.
I think to destroy, it depends on destroy.
Yeah.
When we destroy parent, we will automatically destroy children. But the chat is working different way from children to parent.
Right.
Parent
So
to children.
let's to make sure I am not bullshitting, right? I think it has many touch. Maybe there's a belongs to touch. So and then touch is another way to decache. So it helps because you update that. So let's say when you render 10 user on a page, you can cache each one as a view, but as soon as the view is cached to the cache key of the user.
Yeah.
But if you touch the user, then the cache key is different. So let's check this guy. Touch. So you can, I think you're right that it should be defined in the child. So it's in the touch. And then, so how that's, for example, here, dependent destroy, right? Right. But let's say post, then post has to none. So application records Rails 5 way, but it should be active. So belongs to user touch true, right? It just means that you're right. So now if I do, the touch should be declared down here, because if I touch the post, then it also touch the user. If I do it over there, it feels wrong because if I touch the user, it touch all the posts. Yeah, so sorry about that. I think right? This means when I do something to when I destroy user, I go and destroy everyone else. So that's declared here, right? Down here, when I touch myself, when I touch myself, right, it also touch my parent, which is here in this case the belongs to user.
And in the combine,
And
you
then,
passing the boss.
so well here you can have a callback here, but the idea here is you can have after touch here. But the idea here is if you do a post dot touch, it will touch itself and then touch user, and then this callback will get run.
And it will passing the, I mean the parameter will be the boss.
If you do it here, then it's post. Yeah, it's just self basically. This is self, right? Pretty much. Except this is in a class method. So post here is an instance. So put touching post, right? So now if you do this post touch, it will first print this, and then it print this. Yeah. So this actually is useful if you do this showing when this last update get at, or there's some caching involved. We'll see if we get time to do the caching. So next is let's learn a bit of cool active record query. So this is the first one. Does anyone use find each? It's probably very common. Have you used it?
Yeah,
Why do you use it?
better performance.
Yeah, because if you have a million users in the database and you say let's recalculate or let's send email to them, like once a week you send a weekly newsletter. So you say newsletter dot user, then new user and deliver now. So I say, for example, you calculate the points because or recache the simple search, right? No, a search kit. Obviously, you don't want this, right? So there's a better approach. Initially, Rails 3, Rails 2, everyone did this, and the default batch size is 1,000 record. So what Rails doing is what select blah blah blah, but down here it just limit 1,000, right? And then actually so limit 1,000, and then it say the first query let's say offset 0, and it does again with offset 1,000, and then keep going, right? The default is 1,000, so you don't need it, but people realize that it's annoying, confusing when like you have to do two loop. So someone else implement find each, so that's faster. Sometimes you want to pass this whole loop to something else. So uh, who knows? In some cases you actually don't do this, but you pass the group like user process, maybe user maybe you do this yeah worker. Maybe you want to pass the whole group to it. So depends on your need. Yeah.
Yeah, I use it one time.
Right. Okay. So that's cool. So now
But what actually is to it just grab one tab.
it's the same as here, right? Even it just
Because it's still for impact.
yeah, it's just exactly the same,
Yeah.
but it just wrap this. It feels more intuitive because exactly it feel like this up here, except that now it can scale, right? Otherwise, a million record will get you, a million megabyte. I don't, that's a gigabyte of memory. In suddenly your processes like big. Okay, very quickly to recap on conditioning. So we all know that's the most basic way. We just implemented active record. The where thing is quite simple, right? You can just call connection.exact that. That's a SQL query, right? Almost. You just append select star blah blah blah, and now you just add where to it. So this is okay, right? Everyone understand this? Does everyone understand this one? So you search in SQL, you put that, that's a search for this in any string.
Yeah.
That's okay, right? But you know why we don't do this?
Some attack. Injection.
Right. The injection, because if you just param first name, basically you set it to be like, one and then that, right? And then you just say delete all, like, drop all, or set admin, right? So there's just a lot of way to do update, users where you forget your ID and make use super admin, or you just drop everything. And there even is some way to execute code, like, so you can actually do this after you are able to go one more round. So now you don't want that, but if you do the question mark way, then Rails always sanitize it for you. That makes sense, right? So this a lot of people know. One argument, two argument, then you just put one argument, two argument. You guys know this one?
Yeah.
You use it often, pass in a hash, but now instead of question mark, you use a name. Do you know that? Do you know this range? A lot of people don't know this. So for date and number, you can actually do a range like this. So in Rails, a lot of things you do range and it just convert. So it's nice. It's easier than writing created less than equal. And because less than equal, you cannot use a hash. You have to use this thing. You see that this one and this one, which one is better, right? This one is nicer. Now let's look at hash. So when we learn something, we break down the structure like this. Then we will not forget, right? Like next is the hash method, right? So you can put an attribute, and you know how this is translated to different database. In SQLite, it's T for Boolean, true. In MySQL, it's 1 and 0. In SQLite, is T and F. So using hash is very important for Boolean variable like this. Of course, so what I mean is, right, this is still good, right? But you cannot do the string way, because that will not work with all database, right? Cannot do that, because in MySQL is that, and in the other one, SQLite is that. Okay, so hash is nice. Imagine then where
Will it apply similar to new?
exactly and this one is tricky, right? Because it convert to name is not null. Yeah. So, but how do you do name is null? How do you do this? Name is null. Does anyone know how to convert that? Find. Basically, how do you find all clients with no name? How do you do that?
So a code in name in new, right?
Uh-huh.
And
Oh, name with non-nil,
yeah,
not empty name. How do you do that? Where?
No. Yeah. Right.
So this is
not.
it's in Rails 4. I'm not sure if it's in Rails 3 or not.
Yeah, right. It's right too.
Okay, so it's included now. But what's cool is Rails, again, the active record thing, you can convert the key, all the two model, two key, and all that little thing. It works here. So author, you can just pass it and understand, okay, I'll take the ID on both sides. Who here knows the difference between joins and include? Have you ever asked yourself that? It's like, why is it include here and why is it joins here? Alright, so let's do joins. Joins very important to learn. So, who here knows how this get translated.
I know. So try it. We will try to. So the try table we use inquiry, but for include it just get included in the return record. We don't use inquiry.
Mm.
We
Okay.
do.
Query, yeah. I think that's a good answer. But you guys know if I have this, I assign this as cube, and I can do SQL, right?
Yes.
Right, and you can even also do explain, right? This is like what index and all these things. So we'll find out. But basically, this guy, let's just try to exercise our muscle here. Select, start from authors, and then what next? Articles. So you say image join articles, and then
Where
On.
on
on
authors dot,
ID equal to article dot on ID
and then what? Where
Score.
where article dot on ID equal to the input
right?
ID
This is like author dot ID, right? Yeah, it's not too bad. So when do you not use image join? Have you ever not used inner join?
outer join.
Left
You mean
right
outer?
Oh, left outer join.
Yeah.
We can
And
talk
on
on
the
that.
left
All right.
and right.
All right, we'll get there. So basically, look at the other option. This one is very useful, very common, right? Without having to do this in and then you have to, do this yourself. Then array will just work, right? You don't want to do, maybe you can actually do where in the old days orders count in, and then you like that, and then here you're like, oh, orders, 1 2 3, join, something like that, right? That's a lot of work. So this is better. The not one is there. Actually, in Rails 5, there's another thing called OR.
we don't have all in Rails 3.
Not even Rails 4. So in Rails 5, you actually have you have OR as well. OR. But okay, for ordering, it's also important that these are the different syntax you can do it. The same, then this is the same, right? You can order by many things. You can order them when you chain them, or you can reverse the order, right? So it's okay because again, this is chaining. So obviously you can assign it to some scope, and then you call order again on it. So that makes sense, right? Nothing crazy. So, who here knows the? Okay, who here use group a lot? Do you use that a lot? Because you work on analytics. Group, yeah.
I used it the first time yesterday.
Oh, yeah. Group is extremely useful, and of course, if you want to be lazy, the guy who wrote that search kit, that group is very nice to. He has one called active group, something like that, and you can just group things even more convenient. So, for example, right, you group by status, then this is how you do it. It automatically convert it to a hash. If you look at this query, does it make sense? This is just a SQL function.
So, when we run that, what is the return value?
What is this, right?
Yeah.
You're taking orders, and then you're asking, how many orders do I have each day? So you can draw a graph.
Yeah. But why I mean the type of the object return. So when we do group type, we will get an array back, right?
Right.
But what is the type of its object in that array?
Sure. right? So in his case, obviously it's a hash, and in that hash, so right now you have a hash. The key of the hash is the date. So the key of the hash is, for example, what day is it? Uh, 14, and the, the value, right? You were able to group.
Yeah.
So the value is a list of object. So obviously here is order one, ID one, blah blah, and then order ID two. Does it make sense?
Uh, Yesterday I tried to do something like group and then select, then I got back an array of similar to this, but an array of order. Yeah, but that order is
Do you have to get a hash like this?
Not yet.
So the tricky thing, you cannot call uh, it. You cannot just call this group status, because up here you have to group by something you select. So you have to group. What you group is has to be in the select column. Okay. Okay. Now this one, however, you cannot just have it like this. But if you put count, then it's a special. It will convert this into a query that say group, and then the query is in there. So let me maybe find an example. Let's find one of those apps that we did. What's what's a good app that has more than one model? Maybe coder dating. How many model do I have in here? I think maybe the restaurant. Wait, restaurant app. Okay, batch 3. Try that. Photo. Photo. And I will find the, look at the schema file. How many model I have. Photos. Oh, this one model. Does anyone have something we can try on?
Here we have a symbol that we look count.
Uh-huh.
So we have a color count on and
Right?
yeah.
Exactly. So can you do group without count? Can let's just look at this example, right? Okay. So it's an array. But what's it pointing to?
so the
Select.
this element is an organization.
Yeah, we don't have select. Because we
It's
select
selecting
all-
everything.
Yeah, select
Depends on. Okay. So your question here is,
This element, what
yeah, what type is it, right? So
here is it is an organization.
a dot class is an array or not? It's a relation. Is there a size? I think this. How many organizations? 22, right? So it's. I think it's a completely useless query because. Oh. This one. If you group them by chip, and it's not a hash, so weird. Because it's an array.
Affect the organization.
What is it? This is this. Where is it from?
You count
Default, yeah,
scope.
default scope, yeah. So if you count, obviously, I'm not sure. Let me double check on this one. What are some fields? Fields, column. Oh my god, so many things going on. If yes, so if you group by, if you select this, we put in a select query. So if I select time zone, maybe let's just do that. So you try this. So select time zone. Group by up there. Hold on. What's for your model? I think if you pass in, let's say active. Okay, hold on. Okay, let me. I will include it in some homework so we both get some
So can
cool
you
stuff out of it.
tell more about relation? So I'm very curious how scope and a lot of things they just concatenate the scope context to enhance quality.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So, but for this one, I think for now, based on my understanding, right, is that the when you group, it's when you group them. Uh, unfortunately, if you don't count, what it's doing is each your organization here, right? So I think this one is not correct, but organization. But when you see group by time zone, it will return the a list of organization with unique time zone, because let's say in the if you in the database, let's say you have the time zone column and then something else. What's happening here? It will return records with, let's say, not time zone 1, 2, 3, 4, but down here on the right hand side, result. This is group by, right? On the right hand side, it actually there may be more than one organization. Organ 1, organ 2, organ 3, 4, something like that. And this guy is going to return you only one, which is quite useless.
But I think
But-
we cannot do that in Progress and here. We only do it in the math.
Exactly. That's why at first I thought this will fail, right? Because it's loose. But in SQL, it just right now it's just loading the first. That's why group, you then if you do count, then this becomes 1.22 here, yeah, and this is 2.2, similar to down here, yeah. So So yeah, I think and then 3.0, 4.0. Now let's quickly mention this. Where is good for you to do conditioning on the column that you already have. But sometimes when you group, you need this. Imagine this query. If you don't know this having, sometimes it's really hard to write your query. So when you can select all the order that have sum, right? So that the total of many rows is greater than 100. So when you group them, for example, this is for example price instead of so you group those that sum of these guys is higher than something, then you return. You can also do where like maybe this is nil, but when we learn SQL, this is the confusing part. When like when do I use having? Having is self-specified condition when you condition on something over many rows. Yeah. Whereas for the individual rows.
I'm curious. So back to not query. So how do I select a list of users where the first name starts with and, for example, and the last name is not new?
Mm.
Where
Yeah, question, right? Find users where but
First name starts with something
with
ABC, and last name is not new.
so the idea is you can scope this. So first where, first name. So now it start with then you. What is that?
Like,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Like a
and
that,
yeah,
right?
and last name is not new.
So obviously you can also do start with this query thing, but maybe you can change it, right? And you have to put it in again and
Last name is not new.
last name not new.
Yeah.
So
Huh?
so this is why don't use like where it's very limited. So let's see not name new, right? I think I'm surprised if you can do it in Rails 3, but I mean that's how it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
But I'm not. I mean we can try right now. Actually, that's quite easy. Huh? So it's I have a function here. Let's for here I have this. Let's try it. So what is surprising here for you? I remember all my code. I pretty much I don't hesitate type my name is not now. It's not a big deal. It's very clear. The not one is actually very buggy because it's not returning you something that's fully chainable. But still, if I have user and I have user.columns, oh my god, still too many columns. Oh, now if I do user, it's easy. So let's say something that you just said, right? User where email is age. Oh, okay, try again. Let's just make sure the query looks good. That's okay, right? And then dot where not. Just want something, right? Not new. Let's click down. Oh, what is GitHub login? It makes sense, right? It's still and it chained it correctly. Now the problem is then, let's say some more email nil, right? Wait, I think I have to make it smaller for us to see. Animals. So it just combined. So it's the not only affect the next. So where dot not just go together for that relation. And so very quickly, right? Like when you do this, then you do dot class. What is it? It's a relation, right? If you do this in the console, and you press enter, obviously it load all the users. But if you do this, and then you do this, do you think it load all the users? No, right? Because B is still a scope and it's not yet, it's lazy loading. So then you can still do all this scope and order. But then even after you do that, if you don't execute it, I just add something else because Rails return the last statement, right?
So what is a relation?
So what is an active record relation?
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's try to understand an active record. It basically wrap your results relation, right? That's not good. Where's the any text? So let's see some of the stuff I mentioned here. Gosh, I think there might be a Rails guide on relation. It's not. Is there one? Do you guys see relation? But for our context, is that it wrapped the result before active model. Like when I used Rails in Rails 2, there was no relation. It's just active record. But active relation. Relation. Come on, I can't find it. Active. Yeah. Let's just wrap the result, and I think two key things: wrap the results, and it's lazily evaluated, so you can chain them. And chaining it is one of the most powerful feature of active record relation here. It's a little funny. Yeah, so you see how this over here, the naming changes over time. And it looks slightly different from this guy down here.
Yeah.
I used to be curious and look through all of this, but in general, that's this relation is still chainable. Sometimes you already execute the query. In relation, it gives you all this method where even that is in relation, right? Well, then this get wrapped in, say, name. That's a relation. You can still wrap it and chain it. You can call extra method to it, right? It's user.where is not enough. It's like I think they changed this so you can do dot not on it. That's why user.where now is not a relation. It's a query method where chain blah blah blah, and in it there's a scope relation. So this ignore it when you want to start a scope from top down. Like you know how you filter the list of blog posts, right? For example, in your highest your leaderboard, for example. So let's build a leaderboard. So on your leaderboard, you basically start by saying user, you display the top ranking user, right? So do that in your controller. So def, leaderboard controller, index action. What happens now is, if some, I don't know, maybe sort by order, right? So sort by rank, right? Then you do users equals users dot order rank, right? If params filter by country, right? You just keep narrowing the scope, but you don't want to break that chain. You just chain them together, yeah. So in this case, maybe what's that country. So then here where country is parent country. That's the basic use of it. And of course, you want to move this to your model class, not in this controller because that's ugly. But eventually, in your render, then you use the user's object. Does it make sense? Sometimes, in some cases, there's no one, you can just do that. They also return a scope so that even up here. So let's say if like permission equals to 0, for example, like just for some god know what reason, you can do this. Basically, this person should not see it, and you can still keep chaining. There's more chaining, but it's still chain, but it just doesn't give you anything. It's safe, so you can put it right up the top. So if right, that will still work. Does it make sense? In some cases, to write good code, this is useful. But then, it's like you prevent these objects from being saved at all. Again, for complicated apps like
So what is the relationship between scope and relation?
a scope will return relation. That's the name of the. But scope is when you define like the scope returns a relation.
So
It's just the name. They used to name it scope so that like name scope
means scope.
and all. Good. So let's see. Is there one on scope? Querying. Now, I think even if you look at these guys, I'm sure it will go down to scope very soon. Active, where is it? Active records here. Down. One of these guys, maybe the query interface. I am here, and not condition. Where's scope? But scope returns that, but scope can take arguments, right? And scope can be a lambda. So this is the syntax for lambda, right? In that's a short version, and you can take an argument or not. Usually, a lot of people prefer writing class method like this. This is clearer. Yeah, scope sometimes but as your app is small, this is wonderful, easy to see, one line. But if anything get more complicated, this is better because then you can include all this extra code. It's easier to see.
So scope is something in Rail, not universally in Ruby.
Right, exactly. The scope is only well. So return the scope, and then the scope can return relation, right? But it wrapped in scope, so you can change scope. That's how you take argument. You know how this works? It's just lambda, right? If you replace lambda here, then you have to put the time thing in the pipe in there. Just pipe, the vertical pipe. Yeah, so that's. Oh yeah. So it gets so scope is nothing interesting there. You guys have that default scope. In Rails 3, you may not have it, but because default scope causes so many problems.
Yeah.
When you just query chaining. So here they start having like unload scope and like overriding scope, and this is why people hate it. You're like, come on, Rails, you just add more and more stuff. So you can unscope. This is crazy stuff. So yeah. That one's okay, right? Like nothing. So yeah, there's whoa. So joining is this Rails. The reason why I actually added this left after join, but I never actually used this one because I didn't realize that you have it until recently. The normal way is just to do join yourself, but when you do joins, you don't pass in the symbol, but you just say left after join, and then here post, right? On blah. When do we use left outer join?
We want to left and entity on the left.
Yeah.
With move.
Yeah, okay. Excellent, yeah. Now, the join thing, you know that you can join multiple table, sort of, that's breadth. But you can also join nested, right? Nested is hard to write, like, hard to write yourself because it's like inner join A equals, and then inner join B in there.
Ah,
It's it's not easy to type, right? And, like the query get pretty complicated. So it's kind of nice. So what you said about include is for eager loading. So I think we all know this. I want to mention. So normally if you do this, right, it's called n+1 problem. Have you heard of it?
yeah.
It means if you have n, you load the user, and for each user, then you load the address. Now, if you do this, then it automatically load all the addresses, and then down here it just already cache it in memory, so you just use this. In Rails 5, it's not important. You can just write this way because there's more caching done, and when you render partials, let's say what people are saying is this query is more complicated. So if you write the old way and then you render the user partial, it just cache that all together. So using n+1 query is okay in Rails 5.
So they don't address that.
They
just allow.
yeah, because you know, like if you render all the posts by different user, right, the comments, user comments, but now it's basically cache all the comments by this user select. It's under that user, and every time you insert a new comment to the database, it updates that cache. So it's very smart. So it doesn't really load like 10 new. In fact, all these extra 10 is all cache anyway. So it's very fast. It's only slow if you re-index the entire database. So yeah, no, that's the thing, right? If you every time you insert the record, it's smart enough. So it's this is less of a problem. Still no, for most application, that's only the David, DHS guy and Basecamp approach that they don't care. Actually, they make it work with this. But this is always good. Know this and use it in your code, and it'll look like that. So I think to mention some of that is cool, but because we still have time, it's awesome, and we still have a lot of other stuff. Let's do this exercise. Can you copy this code? I guess we don't have to. Let's just do it by mouth. What's wrong with this here? What's wrong with this? I mean, it's good. It's partly as your active record get bigger. This is one of the very common issues.
The relation.
Relation is nice, so that's what we have as relation. But if I start doing things like this, anyone can improve this for me?
It's made
Sure. Why do you need delegate? Yeah, sorry, what's your...
I mean, if we do that, it may access the personal information. It will vary again in the database.
Okay, so so good point. Now, what if, let's ignore database right now. Let's go back to active record. If we only use this as, for both data and business logic. So here, article.author, as soon as you get the next one, personal information, something is wrong here, right? In your code, then you're like, it may be nil. So what happened? You're gonna do what? Try. And that's bad because every time you see try and more, it's pretty much that it's a code smell. It's very convenient, but it can lead to really bad stuff. So let's say, okay, try. So let's fix this one so it doesn't crash like crazy, right? And so try, and then what? Try name. Yeah, you know, some people make feature requests for try to take multiple arguments to do chain try, and that's what it's pretty crazy. Like, so log limiter is one of the most useful pattern design pattern. It's not much. You just say that you should play with your own toys. You don't use someone else's stuff. So it means this article belongs to what's that? Belongs to author. It means this article can use the method author, right? But how the hell does this article know how to get this name from somewhere else? So don't send messages that it's like I'm trying to talk to stranger. It's like I have 3 friends that I know. I know B, who knows C, who know D. I'm trying to talk to D. Right? The way to do it is to ask B and C to make introduction. Right? So to improve this, people start doing things like, let's say article. How do you normally do it, guys? Obviously, then you can have like personal name, right? Author name. And in here, of course, you already simplify things a little bit. The logic is contained and it's beautiful. Like, there are other problems, but it's still better when you do this. So how do you do that? Author, yeah, still try stuff, but then your if here and there. All right. So, but all the dirtiness is here, not this one being used in the view. The view should never call that kind of thing. It's too complicated, and it's gonna break easily. So we will handle with the nil case later, right? So here is the after version, which is already easy to do. If an author, right here, has one personal information, you all know this method, right? Delegate. What happens when right now if author is nil, no, personal information is nil, what happens when you do author.name? It still crash, right? Yeah, turns out. And it still crash, but if you don't want it to crash, you just say allow nil. True, right? Right? So that's okay. That's just to create the logic. Sometimes you can't use the word delegate. Just use this. Define it yourself. Don't be lazy, right? Explicitly, when you do this, whoever look at your code 10 months later, a few years later, feel clear. But if you use this in all over the place in places, your app will break in some crazy ways. Next, what if there's a name in author and there's a name in this guy? How would you solve the problem? It's like, let's say that's why you name it author name, you don't name it name. Because if you delegate name to author, huh? Yeah, right? So it's very common. So add a prefix. Right? The term, so down here, then you can do prefix. Right? And you can do allow neo or anything like that.
Then we can call article dot author name.
Article dot, yeah, author name. And again, now you can implement this method easily. You can, someone did it, but you can implement this delegate yourself. It's a class method, and then it's called define method on each of this argument, right? It's quite cool, right? Because how would you implement it? It's quite easy. Because right now, def delegate, and here's the list of methods. That's the list of methods, right? And then there's a block, and then there's hash here actually, the hash at the end, right?
How is it possible to?
So it will take all the arguments here, and it will match this to a hash at the end.
So it's going backward, right?
So here hash like that, right? Options. So down here now it's very simple. You just do methods dot each. Of course, depending on hash whether there's prefix or not, the name is different, but you know, do attribute there, and then you can do define attribute. How do you do it? It should return what? So target is options 2.
Yeah.
So you do target dot send what? You can also do prefix options prefix, right? Or nothing, right? So then you say prefix plus attribute, right? And then of course here you can check whether it's new or not. It may crash. So then you can just say this is target method equals that. So you can do rescue, or you can say if target dot respond to target method, then you send it. Otherwise, you return nil, right? So that's allow nil, but it's only allow nil, right? So here, then you have to also consider allow nil. Yeah. All right. So this one is really okay. We just have time for this last one. What if I tell you that if then else the if conditions are bad? You know, we talk about functional programming, all that. They don't use condition very much. One way to get rid of the if is the I think I showed you guys using hash last time. You know, if you hash, then you just hash the key. Like instead of if then else, you use hash. Or instead of case statement, or you basically handle it. Here's another way. It's called the maybe you can call this active nothing, but basically when it's nothing, it's still something. And think of this way: if you have a list of IDs, and normally if you have this, and then you want to say I have, this is very common. You somehow pass in the list of IDs, and then you want to display them, something like that, update them. So I have IDs now. How do I get the list of animal? Animal dot find ID. Obviously this crash, so you know, sure. In real Rails, find by ID, so get nil or not nil, right? And then you want this to be, and then you here is your animals. And then what if you do animals dot map by name? Okay. So in the world of object oriented, if this will crash because nil.name doesn't exist, right? That's not fair, because in some languages, nil is really nothing. What is nil in Ruby? It's an object. What is nil.class?
New.
So technically, this has to respond to this object. So instead of doing an if then else, here's a suggestion. You see no if at all, is by making sure that you're using more classes, but this responds to the logic that you just want name out of all the animals. So I implement this thing you can call, like, you know, nil case, or right, nil animal, or missing animal here. You do this a lot for, like, let's say a missing avatar, a missing email address. Your code will be a lot cleaner because right now you wrap. This is the first step. You don't use animal directly. You just basically wrap it in here so that it responds to this call. It's very easy to test. This view always just uses animal this find method is maintained in here. So you can change this easily now if you do .email directly, .name directly here or not. Yeah, sounds really simple, but hopefully I'll have some interesting steps in the assignment. So just quickly think about that. Like, do you think this is better than the if then else? Like in some, but it's quite cool. It's not easy to like think how can I use it for my project. Not yet, but the idea is that maybe Tiny Pulse has this in your model, in your Rails app. So far in your basic Rails app, you always have like active record model, and model is like inherit from active record base. You should start thinking you have like model have smaller responsibilities, right? Then you just have as many classes you want, small but with clear responsibilities. Then it stay away from the what do you call that? The original active record pattern, where all this logic in this dump into one person class. Let's look at this guy. Basically, now I want my class person to be yours is active record based, but even let's say get exemption, I will have a class exempted person. Exempted person. It's just a class. You handle the or like flagging. You can even do class sign up, user sign up, person sign up, for example. How does that work? When you sign up, what do you really care? You only need to care about maybe this, initialize person, right? And then down here is authenticate, maybe some password. But you don't put all the noise in here, right? To make this controller use this class. And it's single responsibility, right? So person authenticate, something like that. And flagging, that's why there's so in many places, like if you create a new comments, they even create a class like user comment, like notification. Yeah, they've been all the time. And each of that single responsibility, but now you know how to delegate, right? You know how to use the log limiter to avoid use the if then else. And then we'll work more on that, but basically the first step is to know how complicated active record has been, and we separate this out. For example, another one, let's say successful people, successful person. Basically, that initialize in here, which is a person scope, so that you can pass in and then you can pass in an active relation, and you can just chain it more. You can still do like old. So down here will be your person scope dot where age is greater than 40, but separate them out, right? So here active accessor. Now here's the cool part. Active accessor, what's that? Person scope. And you can still do everything else about that old paper, like delegate, email, job, company, to person, right? So it just means this is here where you find the list of people. Sorry, this is not in this case. This case we have to map them back to person for a successful person. But in let's say the Okay, so how? Where? Okay, I think the group by query we can convert to the class. So here's person. This is person scope. It's fine. You basically turning. It's just chaining to return the scope. So it doesn't care whether the parent class is successful person or not. Say, let me just okay. What I'm doing to ignore this delegate first. Sorry, it will require a bit more to hook it up. So what I'm saying is, you make this successful person act like a person class, right? And you already delegating because technically here, if it's in the person class, you actually do self.where, right? But because it's in person scope, it serves a different business.
But actually, self or into class method, so can we use the
Oh,
instance
yeah, you're right. Yeah, so let's say you're absolutely right. I'm sorry. That's why I'm trying to convert two different things here. So let's put them in person and oh, what this successful I would call it successful person filter. All right. So then this is just that. So when you use in a controller, you actually want to just use successful person filter dot new dot old, right? These are just strategy to separate out uh, the logic, so you don't have this all in one class. So give it a try. So now if you read your own code, you probably will see it. A lot of people have done it in your app because by now it's very large, right? Can you find some interesting example in that and let's just share, like maybe a screenshot or something from your own code base, and then ask question like why is it done that way? Yeah, maybe.
our app review decorator.
Yeah. So yeah, decorator is we can talk about decorator. I can include that in the note. So decorator and presenter, there's a lot of misunderstanding around them. And there's a lot of misuse as well. So it's really we need better examples. So, we'll discuss decorator on Monday. God, are you still there? I'm not sure. Sorry if it's so hard to hear.